Guangzhou, a city of commerce on China's southern coast that has been at the forefront of great changes. Thousands of years of contacts with the outside world have created a city with a rich history. While it is a shining example of a modern Chinese metropolis, people of this era still like to recall its glorious past. The passing of time reflects the glories of the city, but also make young people curious about its history.
小时候特别喜欢邀请同学到我家一起玩，他们第一感觉我家其实很古怪吧，总是家里有一些年份很旧、奇形怪状的一些东西。只不过当我去到别的同学家，哦，原来我们家确实很不一样，好像别人那种才是一个家。我自己家里因为摆放了这么多东西，更像一个博物馆。
In March 2018, Huang Siheng met Shane Matthew Harris, who shares his interest in Guangzhou's history.
Wow. This is our studio.
Yeah, so this is the place you were telling me about, huh?
We collect the maps, some ancient books.
So all this stuff has to do with old Guangzhou, right?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Seeing how did you get all these kinds of objects?
Yeah, actually they all from my father.
Okay.
He collected about 40 years.
Wow.
Show you something special.
Huang Siheng's father found all these historical objects through painstaking efforts. These silent relics create a path to Guangzhou's past, leading Huang Siheng and Shane deep into its history.
You can see the more detail about the Canton map.
So this is the same one that we saw earlier, right?
In the beginning. Yeah.
Cool.
That one is Guangzhou Temple.
Mm-hmm.
The Yuexiu Shan.
Okay, so it's like Yuexiu Park up here.
Yeah. Usually the foreign people, they're not allowing to enter the city.
Right.
So they have to live around behind the wall.
At this point, there's no 13 factories.
Yes. After like 200 years, then the 13 factory, they have a point at the left bottom.
300 years ago, commerce in Guangzhou was centered in an area of the city known as the 13 Factories. One of the most important merchants from the 13 factories was named Wu Bingjian, better known in the West as Haokua. He established the Yiwo Hong, which engaged in silk fabrics, tea, and porcelain trade between China and the West. He was the largest creditor of the British East India Company and also supported the Forbes family after navigation lines opened between China and the U.S.
I mean, there were stories that came down through my family. He was the person who took my great-great-grandfather and his brother under his wing and was responsible for their success. Haokua was the most successful of the Han merchants. His investing $1 million, the richest man in the world, in a number of industries, but chiefly in railroad.
At the time, the Qing government implemented the Canton system, and Guangzhou was the only port open for trade. The 13 factories thus became the only government-franchised organization for foreign trade. Their annual tax reached over 1 million taels of silver. As the leader of the 13 factories merchants, Wu Bingjian was not only a legendary business figure, but also showed great humanity in his trade dealings with Westerners.
In 1837, as you know, there was a disastrous economic collapse. One of my great-great-grandfather's colleagues owed a great deal of money to Haokua. We're talking $70,000. Realized he was stuck in China, essentially, for the rest of his life to try and pay that back. Haokua asked him to come into his office, and he tore it up, the IOU, in front of this man and said, "Your family needs you. Go home."
After the 13 factory era, most of their trading facilities and storage houses moved across the river to Henan. The major branches of the trading firms would open up offices here by selling things like tea and silk and some miscellaneous items from the West into China.
The business miracle created by the 13 factories continues to enthrall young people from all over the world. As a student of Chinese history, Shane Matthew Harris has naturally become their guide. Looking back on the history of trade between East and West, they gain a deeper understanding of how open Guangzhou was all those centuries ago.
I am from the United States, and I was born in 1990. For Guangzhou, again, a lot of it just happened when I came here. I only knew it was the third largest city in China. My city's maybe 500,000 people, so I liked the idea of going to a much bigger place than my hometown. So when I came to Guangzhou, what I found that struck me a lot was the city has so much modern architecture and places, but it melded very well with more older parts of town. You know, it's very easy to go from one district to another, and it really is like you're changing time periods.
There you go.
Oh,
That's the part of the Xiamen building.
Yeah. This one is the Canton Club.
Yes, it is.
Today it's at that big yellow building that's next to the bank. The Starbucks is all on those
这个年轻老外啊，开始我觉得他应该只是了解过一点历史，很惊讶我给他看一些资料，他会很感兴趣，不停的去找，然后一个星期给我带来的就是那个人物背后的所有事情。Wow, that's last picture over there.
So then I just started plugging into Google. A lot of it is actually free, just nobody reads them. They're so outdated. It's not something most people tend to want to look for. Siheng really cares about Canton's history and preserving it and telling its stories. And that touches me very deeply to know that there are people here who do care.
What is your favorite about the Xiguan area?
Well, I think my favorite spot is...
Xiguan was under the jurisdiction of Nanhai County during the Ming and Qing dynasties. It is an important landmark of Guangzhou's modern history and has not only witnessed the rise and fall of the 13 factories, but also the arrival of modern industry. The Li Wan Museum in Xiguan was formerly the home of Chen Qiyuan, founder of the Jichanglong filature and pioneer of the nation's modern industry. In 1873, Chen Qiyuan founded the first machine reeling filature in China, financed by national capital. With machines replacing manual labor, there was a drastic increase in exports of raw silk in Guangzhou. But this was not the first business miracle Chen Qiyuan created. 23 years earlier, he went to Saigon with nothing, but then bought half of Guangdong Street by virtue of his ability to survive.
陈启源的确是一个很特殊的一个人。他们说，他不是说他是岭南鸡人吗？就是畸形的鸡 ，abnormal man of South China。那然后我爸爸说，鸡人是取自于庄子，鸡于人而谋于天，就是跟常人不一样。
Chen Qiyuan had unique business insights. During his investigation tour to Southeast Asia, which was still under colonial rule at the time, he saw the steam silk reeling machine from France for the first time. He suddenly realized that Western industrial civilization was coming to China. He managed to bring this technology back home simply by observing and memorizing it.
法国人是不会给他的，因为他当时也是要技术垄断的嘛，所以也没有卖给他任何的机器，没有给他任何的图纸，没有给他任何的指教。他是拿着一个自己的凭记忆画出来的这样的一些图纸回来，然后在南海这个地方请了一些刚刚开始做机器的朋友，大家一起钻研，做出了中国的第一台的烧丝机器。
开始大家都不觉得我爸他拿废铁之类的东西回来要干嘛，我妈觉得太陈旧了， 有几次就当垃圾扔掉了。但是我爸他很清楚自己在干什么，因为他在广州长大，无论这是一个电表或者保险箱，只要有广州2个字的，他都觉得很有价值。所有他收回来的很旧的物品，他总能发掘到里面的故事。
So this is like the science and medicine kind of corner over here?
Yeah, the bottom line, medicine.
Nice. This one looks interesting. What's this
Yeah,
one?
it's from a bank about the 1920. You insert the check and punch the area number.
Oh, so
that
you
you
turn it
have.
like this, right?
Yeah.
And then punch it here?
Yeah.
Oh. So is this foreign made or was this made here?
That is made from the US.
Oh, really?
Yeah, is it? Yeah.
The foreign-made objects that Huang Siheng and Shane are looking at come from an era when communication between Eastern and Western civilizations had just begun. At the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, technological achievements from the West streamed into China. But one Cantonese man was spreading Oriental wisdom in the field of agriculture outside the country. In 1918, Dai Zonghan from Renhe Town, Guangzhou, bought the cheapest ticket available for a boat to Peru. He was only 16, and life in Peru was quite tough to begin with. He started working as a handyman, and after more than 20 years, with the capital he accumulated, he started to cultivate wasteland for farming. At the time, Peruvians mainly lived on potatoes and corn, and rice was a rare sight. The fried rice that was common in China was an unusual delicacy in Peru, but only because local people lacked rice cultivation technology.
秘鲁是一个缺水的国家，收成方面不理想。秘鲁人他们当时种植的话很原始，用这个木棍啊，插一个洞呢，就放种子上去啊。
他有一个心愿，就是说，要是稻米普及在秘鲁，你靠自己几个农场不成气候，一定要老百姓都来种。
Dai Zonghan brought Chinese planting technology to local people. He adjusted it to local conditions and built the curved field ridge, solving the problem of water shortages while also improving the variety and yield of crops.
当时他们当农场丰收以后，人家都来学那个技术，老百姓来学，没钱买种子啊，买肥料啊，买工具啊，那么戴宗汉就借钱给他们，很实在，他就一定要使你解决你的问题，把稻米种出来。结果呢，老百姓普遍种了以后呢，从秘鲁一个缺粮国变成了出口粮食的国家，这是他的一个很大的功劳。
Y para economizar el agua, creo que ahí así es curva de
nivel. Posaba el agua.
Claro.
Mejor, pues, como las pozas eran grandes, ahí el agua lo mantenía muy bien el agua.
Dai Zonghan spread rice cultivation technology to both the coastal and mountain areas. Because of his contribution, the Peruvian government awarded him the prestigious National Agricultural Medal in 1968.
秘鲁政府从来没有颁奖过一个华人。
Today, there are thousands of Chinese restaurants in Peru. On almost every street of the capital, Lima, there is a Chinese restaurant named Chirfa, which comes from the word for dining in Cantonese. The Peruvians who enjoy fried rice in these restaurants will always remember Dai Zonghan as their country's father of rice.
秘鲁人对炒饭啊，真是男女老幼，个个都喜欢，而且百吃不厌。我们在秘鲁做中餐馆呢，首先我们接受了老祖宗留给我们的遗产，就是那个稻米。以前呢，秘鲁餐桌上面，秘鲁人吃的就是土豆、玉米。现在呢，就什么饭都有，都很喜欢，连他甜品也是用牛奶。 跟那米饭来做的甜品，这个情况只有秘鲁有，别的国家我没见到过。
Guangzhou's openness for the last 1,000 years has not only left it with a unique business legacy and major achievements in science and technology, but also spiritual wealth left behind from previous talents. For Huang Siheng, the old objects his father collected seemed to contain cultural codes of a history that he was strongly attached to.
那天是4月30号，我还在机场，接到我妈电话，说：“你快点回来吧，爸爸没了。”那时候我没反应过来，我听到我妈很崩溃的说的那句话，头脑一片空白，我不敢想要面对的一个事情是什么样的。我跟我爸价值观非常不一样，他不喜欢坐车，他不喜欢坐我开的车，他是一个去哪里都喜欢搭公交车、坐地铁的一个老人家。永远让我对他最深刻的那个是，他转身进去地铁的那个背影，拿着个环保袋，感觉他很孤独。他好像很害怕这些东西会消失了。其实他对每一件产品都有感情。我没有问过他最喜欢的一件，但是他问过我一句：“你以后会怎么对待这些东西？”我说我一定帮你好好保管，我不会把它们卖掉。And this one is the China illustrate. It's a different year, like the 1840.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay. So we're about a couple hundred years later then.
Yes.
Ooh, this is interesting.
Yeah, that is the opera.
But it looks like, if you take a look at the faces.
They are having a high nose and small eyes. That's what the foreigners recognize Chinese as.
Yeah, definitely is not Asian features.
Because he never been to China, so.
So it's kind of a combination of what details he does know with sort of making it up as.
Yeah.
How are Cantonese people different from, say, other people in China?
I would tell the Cantonese more concerned about the food and the place.
Guangzhou has a unique food culture and is known worldwide for its delicacies. Cantonese cuisine is an important part of Lingnan culture, which also includes kung fu, lion dance, and dragon dance. Merchant ships brought these Chinese traditions to Southeast Asia and took root in Chinese families there. Chinese New Year is the most important festival and the best preserved tradition among overseas Chinese.
祝我们的大家庭身体健康，万事如意，一鞠躬。
For thousands of years, Cantonese people sailed south to start businesses in Southeast Asia. One of them was Huang Huayan, founder of the Kawan Lama Group, a leading retailer and importer in Indonesia. Huang Huayan came to Indonesia in 1938. Through a combination of skill, resilience, and diligence, he opened a hardware store in the Chinatown there.
放学回来不是回家，就是到店里去玩，在那边一般玩，一般看我爸爸卖东西，我在那边旁边看他们的手势，他的动作，你可以吸收了不少的 lesson， 在跟我爸爸之间学到了怎样做人，怎样去做生意。
Through painstaking efforts, Huang Huayan's hardware store gradually expanded. In 1976, he officially handed the Kawan Lama hardware store to the 20-year-old Huang Yijun and his siblings.
从我爸爸传留下来的一个印象，兄弟姐妹要团结，各有各的优势，各有各的缺点，变成一个 very strong, very powerful team， 很强的一个团队。这种气氛一直延续到今天，成为我们大家族的精神财富。 年年有余，大吉大利，步步高升。 开始好像一个小鸟开始可以飞了，所以去国外找产品，跟人家接触，学了不少。
By looking for products abroad, Kunkoro Wibowo means the Canton Fair. At the beginning of the 1990s, he began looking for trade partners based on Indonesia's economic development and its consumption per capita. He turned his attention to China and in 1995 attended the Canton Fair for the first time. He has since attended the fair every year for the last 23 years.
我第一次参加广交会的时候是1955年，广交会是在柳花宾馆，在那边人山人海。我记得那时候跟中国做生意是不容易的事，去看产品当场要下个订单，回来了很难的，因为那个电话啦、fax 啦都很难的沟通。
The first Canton Fair was also known as the China Import and Export Fair and was held in Guangzhou in 1957. For a long time, the fair was the main channel for China's foreign trade. It also served as an important window for overseas Chinese to communicate with their homeland.
15年，从那个开始，我每6个月来一次。现在的广交会比过去的已经大大的不一样，很惊讶中国的发展。中国的产品很适合印尼这样的发展中的国家。几年前，中国的货就是说低档货便宜，用不着几次就坏掉。但是这个印象现在已经变了。
So before you came, what would you expect that Guangzhou is?
So I didn't think Guangzhou would be as big as it is now. I think for most Americans, especially if you were born in the 90s, probably the understanding we have of China was probably through movies like Mulan. In my mind, China was a very ancient place, and we really didn't know much. So when I was coming out here, I had this very vague concept of what life might be like out here, and what might be different from what I had imagined.
Last time, you might be missed our exhibition. I can show you right now in the VR.
Oh, cool.
That's the whole angle.
Oh.
我们一直想旧的物品怎么去创新，让更多人容易的接受。特别在我们这一年代的人，80后、90后，大家最忙的就工作，忽略的东西特别多。Lots of research.
Yeah. So this is where you're going to be telling the story about...
Yes, it's our new exhibition here.
I think what Siheng and I are doing is continuing a tradition that started since the late 1700s. We've had merchants and people coming and learning about China and Canton. It's really the first time you have two sides of the world meeting each other. I find it cool that I'm kind of part of history, really, is I'm doing the same thing that they were doing.
From the Maritime Silk Road to the 13 factories. From the beginning of modern industry to the Canton Fair. This coastal city has been a thriving business hub for centuries. Guangzhou has been shaped by its openness to culture and trade, making it a city of generosity and tolerance. During the reform and opening up in the new era, China embraced the world once again. Guangzhou played a pioneering role as a city that has always been a step ahead of the rest.